there is increasingly, it feels like to me, more and more conversation on social media about trying to get really rich. And there's just this constant do this, work crazy hard. And, I'm old school. I love a hard work ethic. But I am curious your take on, there's a huge cost, and your life demonstrates it, to chasing an enormous amount of wealth in a short amount of time. And I'm asking, not stating, is it possible to do that popular stuff we see, and not wreck your personal life, wreck your physical life? It feels like it's just one or the other. And I'm not saying you can't be wealthy and also be healthy, because obviously you are. But at that point where you were, I feel like I hear a lot of those stories. I've seen a lot of those stories in my personal life with friends that made a lot of wealth quickly, but they sacrificed their family just because of the sheer amount of time and effort. I'm just curious. I'm just kind of free floating on this, but it feels like there's a trade-off there. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's possible to make a whole lot of money and build a life that you love while doing it. But I think it requires a mindset shift that I share in the book, which I think is rather simple, not easy, which is you cannot view these areas of life as existing on on-off switches, which is what most people think. Most people think that if I'm going to focus on making a lot of money, all these other switches in my life just get flipped off. Okay, I'm not going to, no family, no relationships, no health, no time. All these other areas get turned off. The reality is that all of these areas of life exist on dimmer switches. And turning anything completely off is dangerous and inadvisable because all of these areas atrophy. And if you turn your relationships completely off, you will not have relationships later down the line. If you are not there for the people in your life now, they won't be there for you when you need them later. If you're not investing in your health now, it's going to be very hard to turn back from that later. And so the point that I try to make in the book is if you view them as existing on a dimmer switch, you can take the approach of saying anything above zero compounds positively in all of these areas. They're all investments. So just because I'm way turned up on financial wealth, I'm in my 20s and my 30s, I'm building the foundation for the rest of my life. I want to build something meaningful. I want to make a lot of money. I think that's great. That's a great season of your life to do that. But don't shut off these other areas. Take the one tiny action daily that keeps the ball moving forward. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be working out for an hour a day to get a health benefit. You need to do 15 minutes, 30 minutes, go for a walk. You don't need to have 1 million friends during that period of your life. What you need to do is send the text or do the phone call to the couple of people that really matter, to keep those relationships along the way, to continue building them. And so the point and the whole call to action in the book is, it is great to prioritize different things across different seasons of your life. You're going to have a season of your life where you are really focused on financial wealth building. That's great, and that's important. You are also going to have a season of life when your children are 5 years old, and you may not want to be working 80-hour weeks during that because you want to be present more during that season of your life. After that, when your kids are grown up, you may want to come back to going all in on something that you really care about, hopefully grounded in your purpose, grounded in something that means something to you. But what you prioritize within and across any one season can change. And it should change because you are dynamic and shifting over these different years. But not allowing any of the areas to completely turn off is essential if you want to build that life that feels comprehensively wealthy.
Yeah. All right, we'll say back here, another question.
My question is specifically around what we talked about, people, your circle, and your social wealth and social network. Like something you said around when you're in that phase of growth and you're trying to transition, you get to the point where it's a lonely place. It's a struggle to build new connections right now. Because I'm in a new place. I've just been here for a year and haven't met too many new people. I'm trying to network and trying to find new people. I'm at the point where I'm rounding up my program right now and I'm looking for next steps. What would you say are like the steps, like, or things you have in your book that says how to build your network and how to actually get to connect with?
In the social wealth guide of the book, there is one particular section that I called my anti-networking guide. And the reason I say anti-networking is because I think that networking has become a term that has been hijacked that has effectively meant like this transactional idea of like handing out business cards and getting like 1,000 business cards. And the reality is that what you're looking for is not networking, it's genuine relationships. You're trying to build genuine relationships that compound better than any financial investment that you can possibly make, especially in your younger years, because the network, the people are going to be the things that lead to the best opportunities. It's not something that you found, it's the people that bring those things. The best advice I could give you is to think about this concept that I share of finding value-aligned rooms. And what I mean by that is sit down with like a blank sheet of paper and write down some of your sort of core values, like things that you feel very strongly about. And it could be values or sort of like passions, interests, energies. So say you're really into health and like sort of like natural living. Let's say you're really into like the concept of delayed gratification. You're really into those kind of things. The next step of that is, okay, that's one of my core values. What are rooms that self-select for other people that are similarly wired, that have that same set of values? So in the case of those examples, natural, health, all those things, a farmer's market is a really good example of a place where there's going to be a whole lot of people that are interested in that same thing. Gyms are going to be an example of that. Hiking trails are going to be a good example of that. Run clubs are going to be a good example of that. There are these rooms that exist out there that have a whole lot of people that actually are like wired around this very same similar set of values to you. That if you go and spend time in, you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of people that are thinking on a similar wavelength about the future as you are. That is a way to sort of work smart around building genuine connections, because you already know when you're spending time around those people that you have something shared. There's already a layer that's been established before you even have a conversation. And it doesn't need to be that all those people are working in the same sector as you, that they're doing the same interesting things. It's actually sometimes even better if they're doing totally different things that expand your horizon and make you think differently about the world. But you have that mutual understanding of each other from the fact that you're both in that room. I have consistently found that to be the way that I have built some of the best relationships in my life. My like closest mentors in my life were people that I met at the gym at 4:45 in the morning. And that's partially because the type of people that show up at the gym at 4:45 in the morning tend to be high achieving. Especially where I was living at the time, I was like putting myself into rooms that were value aligned in that way. And it wasn't intentional at the time. That was just how I was living. And now as I've sort of distilled that and deconstructed it, that's the real core insight to it.
It's a really good answer. And I'm going to add one thing to this. When you find those value rooms that connect to you, what you need to be doing is realizing in that moment there's already shared values. And then the number one thing people like talking about is themselves. So I have found that if you go in those rooms and you begin to be the guy who's asking questions, so you meet Sahil, right, on a trail and you guys are getting water, go up to him and start asking him questions about him. And the more interested you become, the more interesting you become, right? That is absolutely gold. Because if I've just met Sahil, right, and I ask him 5 or 6 questions about himself, most people are going to now turn the tables and begin to ask questions about you. And now the relationship begins to build, not just, we've got commonality here in these values, which he talked about. But I think if you can begin to be the guy who's always asking about other people, they'll begin to ask about you. And that's where you find chemistry. You know what I mean? And that's really will help you. But that's a really good question and really important. And I want to stay here because I was going to get to this and you kind of mentioned it. This is a cool story. So take us back to the gym because some people know this about
now I
you.
know where you're going.
Yeah. You're like, where's he going? Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, is in the gym in Palo Alto that you were just referencing. How did you guys meet? I'd love just to hear that initial, if you can remember that first moment. And then how does it develop to where this super powerful dude takes an interest in you and now has been a friend and mentor? This is fabulous.
Yeah. The first moment was 6 months long because, so I started working out at the gym. This is in Palo Alto, like right next to my office. I knew that I needed to go really early in the morning if I was going to make it before my workday started. And I was an analyst at a private equity fund, which means that you're working a lot. And so I started getting there every day at 4:45. They'd kind of come open the doors at like 4:50. And there was a group of call it 7 or 8 people that would show up every single day without fail at that time, every weekday. And it was the same people every single day. And so you kind of like build some level of camaraderie that it's like this group of guys and girls that...
You're kind of the freaks. Let's be
like,
honest. No one else is
like
doing this.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of just like, it's your gang. That's like you're in the trenches with them every day. And you aren't like working out together or anything, but you see them every day. You have conversations, you get dressed in the locker room, and then go to the office. And you talk to those people every single day. 6 months in, I've been doing this for 6 months every single day. And I'm like, I have a conversation with some guy, I walk away, and someone comes up to me and is like, do you know who that is? The guy you were just talking to. I was like, I don't know. That's the guy that I talk to every morning. It's like, that's Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. I've been talking to this guy for 6 months and probably saying the dumbest stuff. Like like talking about kettlebell swing, like just probably saying the dumbest things and not thinking about the fact that this is this like incredible person. Partially because I wasn't in tech, so I didn't know tech people. That wasn't my area. And he wore glasses in the gym. He honestly at the time he was the new CEO. Like he wasn't nearly the figure that he is today in terms of his world renowned. He was kind of Steve Jobs' successor at the time. No one was really sure if he was going to make it or do well. And after I found out, I'd been talking to him about like an article that I'd seen. That I thought was interesting, where he had sort of talked about something that they were working on, and he hadn't seen it yet. And so then I got to the office that day, and I tried to cold email him. I was like, I guessed his email address, and I sent the article that we've been talking about. I was like, oh, by the way, here's the article. I'm guessing your email address, see if it's right. And it was right. And he replied right away and just said like, oh, hope you're as good with investments as you are with guessing email addresses, something. And I was like, took that as an opening. I'm big on like closed mouths don't get fed, so I might as well ask what's the worst. Right. So I was like, oh, would you ever be willing to grab coffee? Or, I'm starting my career. I would love, any perspectives. No, I'm not looking for a job. I'm not like, I wasn't trying to join Apple or do something. I just was trying to learn from someone that I really admired. And so he said yes. And that was the start of, now it's been 10 years that we've had a great relationship. He's been an incredible mentor and figure, was one of the main drivers when I decided to leave and go down this entrepreneurial path and do something different. Someone that I deeply respected and admired, sort of giving me permission almost, saying like, I think this is great. You should go do it. You clearly have a ton of energy for it. He was one of the early readers and reviewers of the book, which was incredible. And has just been an incredible figure in my life. But an amazing example of luck surface area of like, I didn't, meeting him was very lucky, but it was engineered by the fact that I was waking up every single morning at 3:45 so that I could get to the gym at 4:45 and go and do this thing.
Absolutely right. But I do want to do a quick follow-up because I want people to understand that there will be moments for many of us, it may not be a Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, but a moment where we run into somebody who, hey, this is a fortunate situation, a lucky situation in that this is a person of great substance. Mm-hmm. Let's just call it that for lack of description. Once you realize that it was Tim Cook, so at first you're just acting like he's a normal guy,
which is, I think, very important, by the way, because every single person that approaches someone of that stature is looking for something, and for at least 6 months, I was just interacting with him on a daily basis.
And so that's my question.
As he was any other person.
Once you found out it was him, how did you act so that it didn't A, get weird, and B, you were able to still nurture what was now already just this kind of fun little relationship? I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, I have always ascribed to the belief that like everyone is just a normal human being. There's very few people I've ever met in my life where I feel like you are almost not human because you're on some like entirely different level. Normally, that's like an athlete that is just so physically crazy and intimidating looking that I sort of feel like there's this weird, like you almost can't relate because they're on such a different level physically. Yeah. But with a business person, like he's an unbelievably normal, down-to-earth guy. Sure. He also is the type of person that was the CEO of the largest company in the world and showing up at the gym at 4:45 every single morning for 6 months. Like, that's the kind of guy that I just like. I just, like, I know a lot about you.
No entourage.
To the point of value-aligned rooms. Yeah. Same, like, at the time, there was, like, no security at the time. Now he has, it's like traveling with the president or something. Now he's got a full detail. It's very different. But, like, the type of person that is on that level and that's still, it's the point of you never made it. Still show up every single day and do this thing because it's just part of who you are. It's part of how you operate. I know that type of person. So like I can relate to that type of person. I am also a big believer that we all, no matter who you are and where you are, have something of value to add to everyone else in the world.
Right.
So he is the CEO. I clearly cannot tell him anything about leadership, about being a CEO, about Apple, none of those things. I can't add value in any of those ways. But there's ways that I can add value to his life. I certainly knew more about training at the time. So there was times when we would chat about different training things. I certainly saw and had texture on like a finger on the pulse of things that were being talked about in the world. So like the article that I sent him when I cold emailed him was something that I had seen that he had not seen, and I followed up to send it. It was a tiny little way that I could create some little bit of value in his life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important lesson of like, there's the tendency to think that you have nothing of value to add to these people. And it's not really true. I mean, I recently had dinner with a man named Mark Laurie, who's an incredible entrepreneur that founded diapers.com and sold it to Amazon. And then he founded jet.com and sold it for $1 billion to Walmart, has made an astronomical amount of money. And going into that, I felt this feeling of imposter syndrome, like have a one-on-one dinner with this guy. He's this amazing entrepreneur. I don't have anything to add. And what I found out while we were having the dinner was that he's working on a book, and he's interested in trying to understand the processes around book and what the launch and how it's working. And so it ended up being, frankly, that like I probably contributed more value to the conversation than he gave to me.
Without question.
Because he was really interested in something different and weird that I was doing that he doesn't know as much about. And so I left and I texted my wife saying that, of like, it was a reminder of that fact that you might not think you are as impressive as someone or you haven't accomplished something, but you always have a different lens through which you viewed the world that can be valuable to that person. And so it's just getting creative enough to identify what that is. Like, I mean, Khalil and I met because he cold reached out to me, if I recall correctly. And when it stands out when someone does that, it's because they create value for you in that thing. They're like, oh, I identified something that I saw you write about, and here's like a different way you could think about that. Or here was something that I found that you might find interesting, an interesting article or an interesting follow-up. And now suddenly, like, that person is an N of one.